Behind me down on the floor, there are more than 2,000 delegates here to declare their support for Donald Trump. But among them, like you said, are a few false electors from the 2020 election, including a few from Wisconsin. 9 people charged today in this, including the warden himself. Now, we actually got the criminal complaints for this case, and I want to read part of this verbatim for you right now. The RFK Jr. will appear on Wisconsin ballots. That's despite him dropping out of the race. A few signs that say fire Joe Biden, and ironically, that's somewhat akin to the conversation we're hearing rumblings of in the Democratic Party. Not knowing where their kids are and where they're going to be able to pick them up and when they're going to be able to pick them up. We're going on close to 7 hours.
If you're a regular TikTok user, this week's headlines may have you wondering if your favorite pastime is under attack.
It was just before midnight when the car hopped the curb, blew through a traffic sign and the fence that was here, and landed on the walking path below. There was a woman sitting here on this bench just 10 feet away when a car came speeding around this corner. You can see here where it hit the curb and careened into this house.
You have a family here that feels like they weren't heard, that feels like they were dismissed. What do you say to that?
Former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger come out and speak about why Republicans should vote for the Democratic ticket this year. Are you nervous about that? I heard Brady say it's a little loud in the United Center. It's just as loud here in the Pfizer Forum, the home of the Bucks. And right over our shoulders from where we were sitting back here, this is what we like to call the blue carpet of the DNC. We're joining you live from inside the car here at Bratfest on Willow Island, because this is where we have to be. I think we have one last trick here for you. Okay, get going. Residents here are certainly still shaken up after everything that happened last night, but they also tell me unsanctioned parties that get out of hand, like the one that did last night, have been a problem here at this complex for a while now.
I have gunshot wounds. We have a gunshot victim in the middle of the street.
I thought someone was dead since the way that they fall in the street, you know?
Second gunshot victims with UW in front of the building.
Early Sunday morning, chaos at a downtown Madison apartment building.
All of a sudden, there's this big, loud rumbling coming from the stairwell because everyone's trying to escape downstairs.
We have more people with blood coming out of the building.
Next thing we know, we're like hearing people yelling, screaming.
Even people were trying to get into my apartment. Since my apartment is right next to the emergency stairs, you know?
We will take anyone we can get. There are a lot of people out here.
9 people shot in total, the youngest just 14 years old.
It is truly a miracle that no one is dead.
Police were originally called to the Lux Apartments on Johnson Street just before 1 a.m. on Sunday for reports of a large party on the rooftop.
Juvenile party on the rooftop with over 30 people drinking. They've broken some furniture in the lobby. They're underage and they'd like them removed.
That's something residents say isn't uncommon.
It happens a lot. Once one person gets in, like, everyone gets in because you can just open the door, boom, they're in.
Online reviews of the complex say the same, even adding it's often people who don't even live there throwing these parties.
The problem here is that, I mean, there's no security, you know, like anybody can just like get into my apartment. It's hard because you're living in a place and you want to feel safe, you know, especially if you're living in a nice apartment like this, you know.
Abel Abaya says he had just gotten home when the party escalated into gunfire, but he could feel the tension even in the lobby.
The situation was already pretty hostile, you know, downstairs. I saw like a little fight.
He says he's had security issues at the building before. His PS5 was even stolen out of his own apartment, but this is the last straw.
I'm moving out.
This is the reason?
Yeah.
Every time it happens, it's a reminder of that night.
All it takes is one headline, and Damasqueta feels like he's back behind the wheel, his wife Gina in the passenger seat.
We were about 2 blocks from home.
Not knowing July 8th, 2023 would become a night they would never forget.
That moment where that car was heading at us head on, that feel of, oh my gosh, like, brace yourself, we're about to get schmucked. It was just, you know, chaos. I mean, she was screaming in pain. I saw lights, and so immediately I thought fire, and I started screaming at her to get out of the car. Turns out that those lights were the police chasing them.
The crash came after a 60-second chase. The Maple Bluff police officer had tried to stop the SUV that hit the Escuetas for speeding. You can see in this dash cam video, the officer reached speeds of almost 100 miles an hour trying to catch up to it. But by the time she did,
it was kind of blackened, just in and out until I actually got to the emergency room. I was healthy, nothing wrong, working, able to take care of my family. And woke up with an ostomy bag.
It's one of the worst case scenarios when it comes to pursuit outcomes, but it's common.
The data are pretty clear that about 35 to 40% of these pursuits result in a collision.
Jeff Alpert has been studying police pursuits across the country for 35 years, interviewing both officers and the suspects that run from them.
One of the things when I teach police to consider these pursuit issues, I always ask them, how would you feel if your 16-year-old daughter were injured in a pursuit that one of your fellow officers was chasing for a stolen car?
Both Monona and Maple Bluff's policies leave the decision of whether to start a chase up to each officer in each situation. That's compared to Madison Police's more restrictive policy that says officers can only start a pursuit if they believe the driver is involved in a violent felony.
I think it's a flex, between departments like, well, you're not going to chase, you're not going to. We will. We'll get them.
In 2023, Madison Police engaged in 29 pursuits. In that same year, Monona Police and Maple Bluff Police nearly doubled that number each. In a statement to News 3 Now, Maple Bluff Police Chief Tanner Nystrom emphasized that the car that hit the Escuedas was already driving recklessly prior to the accident, adding, quote, "Our pursuit policy is designed to enhance public safety and minimize the inherent risks of apprehending offenders whose actions left unaddressed present an ongoing threat to the safety of our communities." But Alpert and the Escuedas say they'd like police to reconsider if that threat outweighs the one presented by a chase.
No one's saying you can't initiate a traffic stop, but once they flee, now you're responsible for them. They're looking in their rearview mirror for you, and once you terminate, it's very likely they're going to slow down.
I don't know this for sure, but it seems like it's almost a game, right? Like, let's see if we can get in a chase and if we can get away.
5 months later, Dom and Gina are still picturing themselves in the front seat of that car.
I wish I was back to just normal day to day. Just be able to get in a car, drive, not have to worry about how I'm going to feel, if the pain's going to get too much.
They hope their story will be a wake-up call for police to put a stop to those reminders.
I hate to say, just let a criminal go, but, it's not really worth it.
Reporting in Madison, Braden Ross, News 3 Investigates.
And the one guy came back from the Army and says, get in and get out as quick as you can.
Mike Sullivan remembers it all.
My draft notice said report on St. Patrick's Day. Can you imagine doing that to an Irishman?
Get him talking, and it doesn't take long before he's right back to where he was 50 years ago, boarding a train to basic training in Alabama.
I never knew where I was going, and I didn't want to go to war.
He remembers volunteering for military funerals while he was there, how it opened his eyes to the toll the war was taking on families.
We get on the bus and go all over to people's funerals. And I did the 21-gun salute. And then they blowed taps. It was tough.
He watched as loved ones buried their dead, young soldiers not unlike himself, until the call came for him.
I didn't think I was coming back, burying all those boys. And they're all boys, 18, 19.
He was off to Vietnam to fight in a war that at 19, he didn't even fully understand.
It took us 50 hours in the air, but I was in no hurry. I figured if the plane crashed, I was probably more likely to survive that than Vietnam.
Mike landed in Vietnam in February 1967.
You get over there, and you're scared to death. Somehow you turn that fear switch off, and it doesn't come back until about 30 days before you're ready to go home.
He took his friend's advice, got in and out as quick as he could.
If I don't think about the war, the bad parts, all the bad parts, there was a lot of it that I enjoyed over there. I enjoyed some of the people. I enjoyed being in the country.
A year after he arrived, Mike got his orders to go home.
One young rebel climbed up to lower the American flag to half-mast.
They told us that there was problems. Told you you'd probably be better off not to wear your uniform on the airplane coming home.
In weeks, Mike went from Vietnam to working on the UW-Madison campus at the center of one of the most active anti-war cities in the nation.
I started having nightmares. And it wasn't from Vietnam. It was from what I returned to.
He was still working for the university when a bombing at Sterling Hall killed one and injured 4 others on campus.
That's more like war than it is protesting.
At the same time, he was dealing with the aftermath of a war that was still claiming the lives of his peers.
My mom's best friend, son Butch, that was a little bit older than me. We both went over the same time, and I came back and he didn't. How hard is that?
Years later, things are different. Instead of hiding his service, Mike wears his Vietnam veteran hat proudly.
I like wearing my hat because I like to meet other Vietnam vets.
So when the opportunity came to join 87 other veterans on a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Washington, D.C., it was a no-brainer.
I always thought I'd like to see the real wall and go look up my mom's friend, son. It's emotional. And it's everything today has been like that.
But after a long day of sightseeing and sharing stories, he never expected this.
It wasn't what we came to home to.
50 years later, Mike Sullivan finally got the welcome home he never had.
Just the people that took the time to make us feel good and give us a welcome we never had.
And that's something he'll remember forever.